welcome to Homestead Corner. I'm Ginny, and today I want to share 10 long-term food storage tips with you. Building a reliable long-term food storage is absolutely essential to being prepared for different types of emergencies. I think food storage is one of the probably hardest items out of preparedness for people to really get a handle on, because there are different ways, so many different ways to do things, and we want to make sure that we've got this under our belts and we know how to preserve the food, store the food, and take care of the food. So we have got it when an emergency happens, when food shortages happen, when it's just not there, or it's just too dang expensive, because we know the prices are constantly rising in this country and all over the world. Things are very, very difficult, and it makes it hard for us to keep on top of our food storage because we have to keep dipping into it a little more than we normally would. Making sure that we have those essentials for emergencies is so important in our preparedness. So these 10 tips are excellent for people that are new to food storage, and they're also great reminders for people that have been doing food storage for a really long time. So let's jump in and check out these tips. So the first thing is choosing shelf-stable foods. We want to make sure that our foods are shelf-stable, most of them, so we can have them for long periods of time. Canned goods, dried rice, dried beans, oats, grains, corns, all of that stuff, making sure we've got a good supply of those items is really important, because they're going to last the longest, and we can store those and not have to worry about keeping them rotated every minute or every month. We want to make sure that we have them and we have an excess of them in those emergencies. They're going to be there for our families. The next tip is to make sure you're choosing proper food storage containers. We want to make sure that they are food grade, so they're not going to leach all kinds of junk into the food, which could make us sick. Glass is my favorite to store food in. Mylar bags are very good as well, and using oxygen absorbers, making sure they are nice and sealed up. You want something that's going to hold an airtight seal. Plastic buckets are also wonderful, but you want to make sure that the lid has a rubber ring in it and is airtight, because a lot of your plastic buckets, the lids are not airtight. And you want to make sure that those plastic buckets are definitely food grade as well. The third tip is using oxygen absorbers. I don't use oxygen absorbers in everything that I store because I don't plan on it sitting for 15 or 20 years. Most of our food we try to keep rotated, but when you add an oxygen absorber to your long-term foods, it is going to help extend the shelf life of those items. Because even your oats or your grains, things like that, they can go bad if they're not stored properly. And that oxygen absorber inside the container is going to help so the oxygen can't destroy the food, because it can degrade your food and make it so it's not as nutritious. It doesn't look quite the same. It can change a lot of components in it. So we want to make sure that we're using really good containers that are going to keep our food airtight, and those oxygen absorbers can help extend the life. Number 4, controlling the heat and humidity in the area where we're storing our food. Our pantries need to be cool, dark, and dry. All of the food should be airtight in there to help extend the life of them. Air does degrade your food. Excessive heat also will degrade your food and can make it go bad over time, especially if you have huge temperature swings. You want to make sure that it's got a pretty steady temperature. And, I'm not saying it has to be 52 degrees every single day of the year, but it needs to be in a kind of normal range. So it's not 30 degrees one day and 100 degrees the next day. Because if you're going from freezing to sweating, then your food is going to lose nutrition, lose its color, lose its texture, and it could definitely spoil the food. It can cause all kinds of issues. We want to make sure that it's really dry in there, and we like to use moisture absorbers in our pantry to make sure to keep that humidity down, any kind of moisture, anything like that, to help our food last the longest that it possibly can. Number 5, rotate your stock. I can't say this enough. We all make mistakes, things get shoved aside, and there's bound to be something that we miss. But if we keep on top of it, we can keep that rotated and using the old stuff first and putting the new stuff in the back or off in a different area to make sure that we get to that old food first. Keeping that rotation going is going to help you from losing food that could possibly go bad. I know we have just moved a pantry and I found a few things that were just way too old. I'm going to eat a couple of them. I opened one up and it smelled okay and it looked okay, but it was way, way too long in the pantry. I don't trust it. And I don't normally throw food away, but once in a while, one of those things is going to get pushed aside or pushed to the back or fall off in the back where you can't see it. Things happen, and just know that keeping on top of it is your best option, and you have less of that waste and more getting through your food in a reasonable amount of time so it doesn't go bad. And number 6, label and date everything. Sometimes if you're buying canned food, your paper labels can fall off the cans. So writing carrots and the best by date on the top can help you definitely. If that label falls off, you know what's in there. It's not a surprise. If it is a surprise, it still can be useful. We have had some lost labels sometimes and had, random weird soups because we opened them a couple of different cans up and we were like, okay, let's throw these together and see what happens. But if you label those, let's say, it's carrots or peas or whatever is in that can and you lose the label, then you still know. And those best by dates on there are so small. They're really hard to see, especially if your pantry is dim and doesn't have a lot of light in it, which it should be pretty dark. So I like to take a Sharpie and you can just write on the top of the can. I write it on the front of the label, wherever. I write it nice and big with a Sharpie. So when I look, I can see it clearly and I don't have to worry. I know that these ones that have a best by date of December of 2023, they're still good to eat, but they need to get in the front and make sure that I eat them up right away. So labeling and dating those foods are really important. And my home canned foods, I always label and date on the lid. And then they're really easy. If you put the Sharpie on the lid, it's super easy to clean off if you're home canning. You can just a little alcohol or just some good scrubbing will get that Sharpie off there. Usually just a quick wipe will not, but really scrubbing it'll come right off. So if you want to reuse your lids for, let's say, vacuum sealed foods, because we do that a lot, and I have even recanned them when you can't get lids. You can recan with those old lids. They don't recommend it, but they do still work. They're not complete garbage afterwards. We try to get that lid off so it is nice and flat with no dents or anything so we can save them. And when I vacuum seal, we use those, or, sometimes I get a little wild and rebel can and use them, and that's okay too. The next thing is vacuum sealing. I absolutely love vacuum sealing, not just for dried foods, but also for your meats and things like that. We vacuum seal. I make big batches of dog food, vacuum seal it, and put it in the freezer for our dogs. We also vacuum seal. We buy large packages of meat because it's a lot cheaper. Usually if you get the big 5-pound packages or 10-pound packages, it's a lot cheaper to buy it that way. So breaking it down and vacuum sealing it and putting it in the freezer, the vacuum sealing frozen food really extends the shelf life. I vacuum seal a lot of our green beans that we grow from our garden, and that way we have fresh green beans all year round, and I've never had them go bad as long as we eat them up within a year and a half or so. And that way we've got those fresh foods in there and we can still eat them. And I personally prefer frozen green beans over canned green beans, but you could do it either way, whatever is good for your family. And anytime you're freezing food, you want to remember that in case of a grid down situation in a long extended period, you want to be able to have a way to process those foods to get them shelf stable. Whether you dehydrate them, you can buy nets to do it outside with zero electricity. There's all kinds of ways to do that. And there's also, if you've got extra canning supplies on hand, you could, over a fire, can off that food. A lot of people think that you can only use pressure canners for low acid food because that's what the USDA says, but lots of other countries do not have access to pressure canners, so they are water bathing all of their food that they put up, whether it's low acid food or high acid food. You just have to really adjust the times and make sure that you are paying attention to what you're doing. You want to make sure your food is safe. And number 8, I like to make sure that we have freeze-dried and dehydrated foods in the pantry. Besides our canned food and our just stored grains and things like that, we want to make sure we've got those other things. Whichever you prefer, if it's freeze-dried you prefer, I say that's great, or dehydrated, that's also wonderful. We store both methods. I think they're excellent, and they can be used in combination together really easy. You basically cook them exactly the same way, rehydrating them and then you cook them, and they're simple and easy to use. Stocking up on freeze-dried and dehydrated foods are definitely something that can help add variety to your pantry, so you've got more options in there to take care of yourself. Number 9, go for diversity. The more options you have in your pantry, the better it's going to be during an emergency situation. No matter what the emergency is, when you've got to eat from your pantry, the larger variety you have is going to make it easier. If you're only storing rice, beans, and pasta, you're going to get sick of that really, really fast. So making sure you have a good variety. We like to keep plenty of sauces, things like that. We love to keep those different kinds of flavorings that are going to last a long time. Spices are absolutely huge, I think, in your pantry because you can change the flavor. You can eat rice and beans 50 different ways with all different spices. Even though it's only 2 ingredients, changing up your spices can really change the flavor of your food, and it definitely helps with food fatigue when your pantry is all you have. And number 10, staying on top of rotation and inspecting your food storage. It definitely takes a little bit of time to go through everything, but I think it's worth it. And if you take just a couple hours once a month to go into your pantry and make sure it's organized so you can find things, and also bring all those things that need to be used first to the front to help you. So when you need coconut milk, you're going to grab the one in the front. It's easier to grab that way, and it's the oldest one, so it's not going to go bad if you've got it there. So we like to make sure we're keeping on top of that, looking at our cans and things like that. I showed a few weeks ago a can with a pull top that had leaked on the top. The can was squishy, and just grab it and squish in your cans. You can feel if something's gone wrong with it. That can, it was all dried on the top. It had been sitting there for a while. It had leaked, and I tossed it because once that can is squishy, it is not safe to eat because air is getting inside there, and it can cause all kinds of bacteria and can make you sick or possibly kill you and your family, and you don't want to take those chances. So making sure that you take that time once a month or every other month or even twice a year is better than a lot of people do. Some people will start a food storage and just stuff it away and forget about it. And that is great when you can do that. And if you're only storing dried beans, rice, and freeze-dried food, you can do that literally, because a lot of freeze-dried foods are going to last for 20 or 30 years. Your beans and rice are going to last, but everything else in your pantry, you want to make sure you're really checking on it. And I love to go and grab a bucket from 8 years ago of rice or beans and use that up instead of going to the store and getting anything new. So once I open a bucket, then I'm going to replace that. We want to keep our pantries full, and we want to make sure that the food in there is good and we're getting fresh stuff in the bag so our food is not going bad. And that's it for my 10 long-term food storage tips. I think it's really important to stay on top of it and make sure that we've got the food storage that we need so we can take care of our families. There's so much going on in this country and so much can happen at any moment. We need to make sure that we're ready. So pay attention to that food storage, get it filled up to the top, and use it. Just keep rotating it and use it. Just don't forget that it's there. You're going to need it. And that older stuff was a lot cheaper when you purchased it. So just think, when you're eating that, you are saving money. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.